Since the dawn of civilization, human beings have carried an unquenchable thirst for knowledge, especially the kind that isn't meant to be found. Every empire, every religion, every secret society has held within it a tension between revelation and concealment, between what is spoken in public and what is guarded in shadow. Beneath the official history we are taught lies another narrative, one written in forbidden texts, burned manuscripts, and fragments buried under desert sands or locked in temple vaults. This hidden story suggests that the origins of humankind may be far older, far stranger, and far more interconnected than we dare to believe. Throughout the ages, those who sought these truths have been labeled heretics, mystics, or madmen. Yet their discoveries often pointed toward something unsettling, that humanity's past has been deliberately veiled. Some say it was to protect us from truths too powerful for the unprepared mind, while others claim it was to preserve control, to ensure that only a chosen few would possess the keys to the deeper mysteries of existence. Whatever the reason, the pattern is undeniable. Wherever truth emerges, suppression follows. The allure of forbidden knowledge is more than mere curiosity. It is the pull of memory. It is as if some part of us remembers what was lost. Ancient myths, stone inscriptions, and half-erased codices whisper of ages when gods walked among mortals, when knowledge came from the stars, and when the human soul was seen as a spark of divine intelligence rather than a mere accident of evolution. These remnants of a forgotten worldview challenge every modern assumption about who we are and where we come from. But forbidden writings are not just dangerous because of what they reveal. They are dangerous because of what they can awaken. Across cultures, sacred texts often warn that certain knowledge must be earned, not taken. They speak of wisdom that transforms the seeker, reshaping the very foundation of perception. To read what was once forbidden is to risk unraveling the fabric of accepted reality. And yet, perhaps, that is exactly what humanity needs. To tear open the veil that hides its own origins, to remember the truths that were once scattered and sealed away. This video will journey through a series of ancient writings, some mythic, some real, all shrouded in mystery, that may hold clues to humanity's true past. These are the texts that empires tried to erase, the scrolls hidden from the masses, and the manuscripts that even modern scholars cannot fully decode. Each one offers a fragment of a greater story, a story that suggests our ancestors may have known far more about the cosmos, the soul, and the cycles of civilization than we have ever been taught. And so, we begin with the oldest of them all, the Sumerian Tablets, written thousands of years before the first pages of the Bible, telling of gods from the sky and the birth of humankind under their watchful gaze. Long before the rise of Egypt, long before Greece or Rome, there was Sumer, a land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where humanity first learned to write. It was here, over 5,000 years ago, that clay tablets were pressed with wedge-shaped marks we now call cuneiform. These tablets are not just records of trade or kingship. They contain some of the oldest stories ever told. But among their lines lies something extraordinary. Tales that speak not of primitive beginnings, but of intervention, of beings who descended from the heavens and shaped the destiny of humankind. The Sumerians called these beings the Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. According to their texts, the Anunnaki were divine figures who governed the world, each presiding over different aspects of civilization. They were the givers of knowledge, the bringers of law, agriculture, and writing itself. Yet the most provocative claim hidden within these tablets is that they were also the architects of humanity, that they created mankind for a purpose. In one of the most famous stories, The gods grow weary of their own labor, and so they fashion humans from clay, mixed with the blood of a divine being, to serve as their workers. It is a narrative eerily similar to later creation myths found across the world, from the biblical Adam molded by God's hand to the Egyptian Khnum shaping man upon his potter's wheel. What makes the Sumerian record so haunting is not just its age, but its precision. These texts describe the structure of the solar system with startling accuracy, naming planets invisible to the naked eye. They speak of the Earth as a sphere suspended in space, knowledge that mainstream history insists was unknown in that era. Whether one interprets these details as coincidence, lost scientific wisdom, or evidence of contact with something beyond our world, the implications are immense. The tablets suggest that civilization did not simply emerge from ignorance into enlightenment, but rather that it was given to us deliberately, as if passed down from a higher order of beings. In the Epic of Atrahasis, a precursor to the biblical flood narrative, the gods decide to cleanse the earth of humankind, whom they deem noisy and troublesome. Only one man is warned, a mortal chosen to build a vessel and preserve life from the coming deluge. This story, echoed millennia later in the tale of Noah, suggests that even our most sacred religious traditions may trace their roots to these earliest Sumerian sources. If so, then what we call divine revelation may instead be the echo of a much older memory, one that predates recorded history and speaks of direct interaction between human and godlike entities. The Sumerians themselves did not view the Anunnaki as mere symbols. To them, these beings were as real as the rivers that gave them life. Temples rose in their honor. Rituals were performed to maintain favor with the celestial order. Kings claimed divine descent, tracing their lineage back to the gods who walked among men. And then, just as suddenly as this golden age appeared, it vanished. The Sumerian civilization collapsed, leaving behind a labyrinth of broken tablets and half-erased inscriptions that speak of wars among the gods and the scattering of humanity across the earth. Modern scholars, of course, interpret these accounts as mythology, a reflection of early man's attempt to explain the unknown. Yet the uncanny similarities between Sumerian texts and later religious writings cannot be dismissed so easily. If these were mere fables, why do we find the same patterns repeated across continents and cultures? The idea of beings from the heavens creating humankind appears in the myths of the Maya, the Dogon of Africa, the Hopi of North America, and countless others. Could they all be fragments of a single forgotten story, one that began in ancient Sumer and spread across the world like a whisper through time? What remains clear is that the Sumerians saw themselves not as the masters of creation, but as its inheritors. They viewed knowledge as a sacred gift, not an invention of their own making. To read their words today is to glimpse a worldview in which humanity is not alone in the cosmos, but part of a greater design orchestrated by forces far beyond our comprehension. Whether those forces were gods, extraterrestrials, or something else entirely, the Sumerian tablets stand as humanity's first written testament to a truth that has haunted us ever since: that we were made, not merely born. And so, as we leave the dust of Mesopotamia behind, we move forward in time to another set of writings, texts said to hold the wisdom of an immortal being, a teacher from the dawn of civilization itself. The next chapter of this hidden story lies within the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, a work that bridges the gap between myth and metaphysics, between the gods of earth and the secrets of the soul. From the sands of ancient Egypt rises one of the most enigmatic and enduring texts in all of occult lore, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Unlike the Sumerian records carved into clay, the Emerald Tablets are said to have been inscribed upon a brilliant green stone impervious to time and decay. They are attributed to Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom, writing, and magic, known to the Greeks as Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great. But while gods often dwell in myth, Thoth is described not only as a deity, but as an immortal being who once walked the earth among men, teaching them the hidden principles of the universe. The tablets speak with the voice of a master who has transcended the boundaries of life and death, revealing secrets of creation, consciousness, and transformation. Their language is not historical, it is vibrational, almost alchemical. The words carry the tone of initiation, as though each phrase were designed to awaken something dormant within the reader. In their verses, Thoth declares that he descended from the Hall of Amenti, the inner realm beneath the earth, where the great masters of light dwell in eternal sleep. He tells of rising again and again, moving between worlds, guiding humanity through cycles of darkness and renewal. This idea, that knowledge is not merely learned but remembered, lies at the heart of the tablets. They speak of the soul as a divine spark that has fallen into material existence, trapped within the illusion of time. Thoth instructs his followers to rise above the shadows of the physical world and reclaim their inner light. His teachings are filled with coded references to vibration, polarity, and transformation, concepts that mirror what modern science now calls energy and frequency. To the initiated, these are not poetic metaphors. They are the mechanics of spiritual reality. The Emerald Tablets present the cosmos as a living consciousness, a vast intelligence through which all beings are connected. And through that connection, every soul possesses the power to ascend. What makes the tablets so fascinating is the claim that they are not merely allegorical, but ancient, so ancient, in fact, that they predate Egypt itself. Some occult traditions assert that Thoth was a survivor of the lost civilization of Atlantis, a priest-king who fled the cataclysm and carried with him the knowledge of the lost civilization, the wisdom of that vanished world. According to these legends, he established a colony in Egypt and laid the foundations of its mystery schools, encoding his knowledge in symbols, architecture, and sacred rites. The pyramids, the alignment of the stars, and the rituals of the priesthood, all are said to be echoes of Thoth's Atlantean science, preserved through the ages under the guise of religion. The Emerald Tablets were first brought to wider attention in the early 20th century by a mysterious figure named Maurice Doreal, who claimed to have translated them from the original Atlantean language. His version describes Thoth as a being who lived for tens of thousands of years, mastering both material and spiritual realms, and teaching mankind the laws that govern all creation. Whether Doreal's text is a faithful transmission or an inspired reconstruction is still debated, but the power of its words is undeniable. It speaks to something timeless within the human spirit, the yearning to rise beyond limitation and rediscover the divine within. Hermeticism, the philosophy that grew from Thoth's teachings, would later form the backbone of Western esotericism. The phrase, "as above, so below," originates from the Hermetic corpus, expressing the belief that the microcosm and the macrocosm reflect one another, that the patterns of the heavens are mirrored within the soul of man. This principle became the cornerstone of alchemy, astrology, and the mystical sciences that flourished throughout the Renaissance. The Emerald Tablets, whether literal artifacts or symbolic transmissions, were seen as the ultimate key to understanding these hidden correspondences. But beneath the poetry lies a deeper warning. The tablets speak of the misuse of knowledge, of the corruption of wisdom through pride and greed. Thoth writes of civilizations that rose to great heights of power only to fall into ruin because they forgot the sacred balance between spirit and matter. His words echo through time as both prophecy and remembrance, suggesting that humanity has lived through multiple epochs of light and darkness, each destroyed by its own arrogance. To those who listen closely, the tablets whisper that our present age is not the first, and that the cycle may yet repeat. If the Sumerian tablets tell of gods who created humanity, then the Emerald tablets reveal the next step in the story, the awakening of that creation. They remind us that we are not merely the children of the gods, but their continuation, that the divine spark lies within, waiting to be reawakened through understanding and will. The forbidden wisdom of Thoth does not lead outward toward new gods or masters. It turns the seeker inward, into the temple of their own consciousness, where the true emerald tablet is said to be engraved upon the heart. And as the legend goes, when that inner writing is finally read, when the soul remembers its origin in light, humanity will no longer need the guidance of gods or the relics of the past. But before we reach that state, the ancient records speak of those who fell in pursuit of forbidden knowledge, beings of light who descended into shadow, and in doing so, changed the fate of mankind forever. Their story is written in another banned text, one that was nearly erased from the canon of Holy Scripture. It is the story of the Book of Enoch and of the Watchers who defied heaven itself. Long before the doctrines of organized religion took shape, there existed a tale so powerful, so disruptive, that it was ultimately cast out from sacred canon. This tale is preserved in the Book of Enoch, an ancient text that describes not only the rebellion of angels, but the birth of forbidden knowledge, the moment when heaven and earth collided, altering the course of human destiny forever. Though attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, this book was banished from most biblical traditions, deemed too heretical, too revealing. And yet, its echoes still resound in scripture, mythology, and the hidden philosophies that have persisted in secret ever since. According to the Book of Enoch, there came a time when certain angels, known as the Watchers, grew enamored with the beauty of human women. These celestial beings descended to the earth, taking mortal wives and teaching their offspring the mysteries of heaven. But their gifts were not the benevolent lessons of divine order. They were dangerous, illuminating powers that humanity was not meant to wield. The Watchers revealed the secrets of metalwork, of enchantment and war, of writing, sorcery, and astronomy. Through their teachings, mankind gained knowledge that elevated them far beyond their original state. Yet with this enlightenment came corruption. The world fell into chaos, consumed by violence and vanity. The children born from this union, the Nephilim, were said to be giants, both in stature and in spirit. They dominated the earth, devouring its resources and enslaving its people. The balance between heaven and earth was broken, and the cries of humankind rose up to the divine realm. In response, the archangels were sent to restore order. The Watchers were cast into the abyss, their offspring destroyed in a cataclysm that would later be remembered as the Great Flood. Enoch, chosen as the messenger between the divine and the fallen, was shown visions of cosmic law, the cycles of judgment, and the destiny of souls. His writings are not the ramblings of an ancient scribe, but the records of a man who walked between worlds, one who was taken up into the heavens and shown the machinery of creation itself. This story, though mythic in form, bears striking parallels to the Sumerian account of divine beings descending from the sky to shape humankind. In both, celestial entities bestow knowledge that transforms human civilization, for better or worse. In both, a great catastrophe follows, a cleansing of the earth meant to erase the evidence of their interference. The continuity of these themes across cultures suggests something more than coincidence. Perhaps the Book of Enoch preserves a distorted memory of actual events, retold through the lens of morality and faith. If the Sumerian Anunnaki were the gods who made mankind, then the Watchers of Enoch were their successors, or counterparts, those who sought to elevate humanity, only to become the architects of its downfall. The implications of the text extend far beyond theology. The Watchers represent the dual nature of enlightenment itself, the blessing and the curse of knowledge. To learn what was once hidden is to gain power, but also responsibility, and the failure to wield that power wisely leads to ruin. In many esoteric traditions, the story of the Watchers is interpreted not as a literal fall from heaven, but as an allegory for consciousness descending into matter, for the human spirit, once divine, becoming ensnared in the physical world. The forbidden knowledge, then, is not merely technological or magical. It is self-awareness, the recognition of divinity within flesh. This interpretation transforms the tale from a cautionary myth into a cosmic drama, one that mirrors the evolution of the human soul itself. Yet, for the institutions of organized faith, such an idea was intolerable. If humans carried within them the same spark as the divine, then the power of the priesthood, the hierarchy, and the intermediaries between man and God would crumble. And so, the Book of Enoch was silenced. Removed from the official canon, it survived only in fragments, preserved in Ethiopian and Gnostic traditions, whispered through generations of mystics and scholars who refused to let its message die. When the book resurfaced centuries later among the Dead Sea Scrolls, it was as though the buried memory of humanity's lost origin had been unearthed once again. Enoch's visions go beyond the rebellion of angels. They describe the architecture of the cosmos, the passage of souls through realms of light and darkness, and the final restoration of balance at the end of time. He speaks of wheels within wheels, of burning stars that obey the laws of the Creator, and of the great judgment in which the fallen will be reconciled or destroyed. To modern eyes, these passages read like a blend of mysticism and cosmic science, as if Enoch were attempting to describe realities far beyond his comprehension in the only language available to him. But for those attuned to the deeper current, the message is unmistakable. Humanity's story is not one of linear progress, but of cycles: rise, fall, remembrance, and rebirth. The Book of Enoch stands as a testament to the uneasy relationship between knowledge and authority. It tells us that truth cannot be contained, that even when buried or condemned, it finds a way to resurface, demanding to be heard. Whether we see it as myth, metaphor, or encoded history, it carries the same haunting implication as the other forbidden texts, that we are the heirs of a forgotten legacy, one written in the language of stars and preserved in the whispers of angels. But not all secrets come from heaven. Some emerge from the depths of human imagination, or perhaps from sources even stranger. Books written in codes no one can read. Manuscripts whose very existence defies explanation. The next mystery takes us into the heart of one such artifact, a riddle that has confounded scholars and mystics alike. The Voynich Manuscript, the book no one can understand. There exists a book so strange, so utterly resistant to interpretation, that even in the age of supercomputers and advanced linguistic algorithms, it remains an unbroken cipher. It is called the Voynich Manuscript, a volume of faded parchment pages bound in vellum. Its script unlike any known language, its illustrations both beautiful and unnerving. It is a text that seems to come from nowhere and belong to no one, yet its presence challenges everything we know about history, language, and the boundaries of human knowledge. Discovered in 1912 by a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich, the manuscript surfaced in an Italian monastery, though its origins stretch much further back. Carbon dating places its creation in the early 15th century, but scholars have long suspected that the work itself may be a copy of something even older. Its pages are filled with looping, elegant handwriting that flows like a living thing, too deliberate to be nonsense, yet wholly undecipherable. Around the margins and in full-page illustrations, the manuscript depicts fantastical plants that have never been seen on Earth, elaborate astrological charts, strange tubes and baths filled with naked women, and constellations drawn in ways that defy medieval astronomy. It is as if the author were describing a parallel reality, a world both familiar and alien, drawn from memory rather than imagination. Over the past century, the Voynich manuscript has attracted cryptographers, linguists, historians, and occultists, each convinced they could unlock its secrets. World War-era code-breakers who had cracked the ciphers of enemy nations failed to find even a foothold in its strange alphabet. Every attempt to translate it, whether through pattern analysis, statistical modeling, or linguistic reconstruction, has led only to deeper confusion. Some researchers claim that the writing follows the structure of a real language, one that is consistent across hundreds of pages. Others argue that it might be an elaborate hoax, an act of deception by an unknown hand centuries ago. Yet no conclusive evidence supports either theory. The ink, the parchment, and the writing style are all authentic to their period, suggesting that, whatever it is, it was created with serious intent. And so the question lingers: who wrote it, and why? Some propose that it was the work of a medieval alchemist or physician, encoding herbal recipes and astronomical observations in a secret language to protect his discoveries from prying eyes. Others believe it may have been an instrument of initiation, a symbolic text designed to awaken intuitive understanding rather than literal meaning, a kind of spiritual mirror in which only the prepared mind could see truth. There are even those who claim it is an artifact of non-human origin, a message sent from elsewhere, preserved through the ages by those who could not understand it, but sensed its importance. The Voynich manuscript occupies a unique place among forbidden texts because its mystery is absolute. With the Sumerian Tablets, we can read the words even if we doubt their meaning. With the Book of Enoch, we can trace its suppression through history. But with the Voynich manuscript, we are faced with pure enigma, a work that refuses to yield even its alphabet. It is a voice speaking across centuries in a language humanity cannot recognize. And perhaps that is its true purpose, to remind us that there are limits to our comprehension, that some knowledge remains hidden not by censorship or destruction, but by the very nature of reality itself. For occult scholars, the Voynich manuscript is more than a puzzle. It is a mirror of consciousness. Its indecipherable script represents the silence of the higher mysteries, the truths that cannot be translated into human words. In alchemical symbolism, language itself is the first veil, what separates the divine from the mortal. To look upon the pages of the Voynich manuscript is to confront the threshold between knowing and unknowing, where meaning dissolves into intuition. The images, women immersed in vessels, plants that merge with stars, speak in the symbolic language of transformation. They suggest a fusion of the earthly and the cosmic, the body and the soul, matter and spirit. Some researchers have noted that many of its illustrations resemble diagrams found in early Gnostic and Hermetic texts, maps of the cosmos, representations of spiritual ascent, and the anatomy of hidden energies within the human form. If that connection is real, then the Voynich manuscript might be part of a lineage of esoteric writings that sought to preserve sacred science in an age of ignorance and persecution. A ciphered language could have served as both protection and initiation, protection from those who would destroy it, and initiation for those who could see beyond symbols into direct revelation. Yet perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that the manuscript is a record of contact, an attempt by a human mind to transcribe information that could not be fully comprehended. The bizarre plants may represent life forms from another place. the charts, maps of a different sky, the language, an echo of communication not meant for human understanding. If so, then the Voynich manuscript stands as physical evidence of an intelligence that has touched our world, leaving behind a gift or a warning, written in the language of the impossible. What makes this mystery truly haunting is not that we cannot read it, but that we can feel its intent. The book has a presence. Those who study it often describe a sense of familiarity, a feeling that meaning hovers just beyond perception, like a dream half-remembered. It is as though the text were alive, whispering to the unconscious while concealing itself from the rational mind. And in that whisper lies the same essence that runs through all forbidden knowledge, the reminder that truth is not discovered, but remembered, that it exists within us, waiting to be recognized. If the Voynich manuscript is a doorway, then it opens not outward into the stars, but inward, into the hidden chambers of the human spirit. But there are other forbidden writings that do reveal more of their message, texts that speak openly, yet were buried because their truths threaten to overturn the power of empire and religion alike. One such discovery, unearthed in the sands of Egypt, carried with it the echoes of a forgotten Christianity, one that saw divinity not in churches or gods, but in every human soul. This is the story of the Nag Hammadi Codices and the hidden teachings of Christ. In December of 1945, near the dusty cliffs of Nag Hammadi in Upper Egypt, a group of farmers made a discovery that would forever alter the understanding of early Christianity. Buried in a sealed clay jar lay a collection of papyrus manuscripts, 13 leather-bound volumes that had rested undisturbed for nearly 16 centuries. These would come to be known as the Nag Hammadi Codices, and within their fragile pages lay a vision of the divine unlike anything preserved in the Bible. To the world's religious authorities, these texts were dangerous. To seekers of hidden wisdom, they were revelation. The Codices contained writings attributed to figures like Thomas, Philip, and Mary Magdalene, disciples whose voices had been silenced or edited out of the official narrative. Their message was unmistakable. Salvation was not granted through external authority, nor through blind obedience to doctrine. It came through gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine spark within each human being. The universe, according to these texts, was not ruled by a distant punitive God, but by layers of consciousness, emanations of a greater, unknowable source. The human soul was not a sinner in need of redemption, but a fragment of light trapped in the shadow of material existence, seeking its way home. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the most celebrated of the Codices, contains sayings attributed to Jesus that bear little resemblance to the familiar sermons of the New Testament. "The kingdom of God is within you," he says, "and all around you, not in buildings of wood and stone." In another passage he warns, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This was not a doctrine of submission or fear. It was a call to awakening. It placed the responsibility of enlightenment upon the individual, not the institution. Such teachings were the essence of Gnosticism, a spiritual movement that flourished in the early centuries of the Common Era. Gnostics believed that the material world was not the ultimate creation of the true God, but the imperfect work of a lesser being, a demiurge, who sought to keep humanity ignorant of its divine origin. The role of the Christ, in this interpretation, was not to die for sin, but to reveal knowledge that could liberate the soul from illusion. To know oneself was to know God, for the two were inseparable. This was a theology of empowerment, and for that reason it was condemned as heresy by the early Church. The institutional Church, rising in power under Roman rule, needed a single unified doctrine, one that reinforced obedience and hierarchy. The Gnostic vision, with its inward focus and its dismissal of ecclesiastical control, was a direct threat. The Gnostics did not require priests to interpret divine will. They sought truth through inner revelation. Their sacraments were not performed in grand temples, but in silence, meditation, and shared understanding. To suppress this movement, the Church Fathers declared their writings blasphemous, their communities heretical. The Gnostic texts were burned, their followers hunted. But some, knowing the tide had turned, hid their sacred books in the desert, an act of quiet defiance that would preserve their voices until the modern age. When the Nag Hammadi Codices were finally translated in the mid-20th century, scholars realized that the version of Christianity we had inherited was only one fragment of a much broader and more mystical tradition. The Jesus of the Gnostics is not the solitary Son of God demanding faith. He is the awakened teacher, reminding humanity of its forgotten divinity. The fall from grace is not the punishment of sin, but the descent of spirit into flesh. The same theme that echoes through the Emerald Tablets and the Book of Enoch. Salvation, in this view, is not granted by belief, but achieved through remembrance. Within the Codices are cosmologies that read like spiritual maps, descriptions of aeons, realms of light, and the interplay between divine wisdom, Sophia, and the false creator who ensnared humanity in illusion. The story of Sophia is particularly haunting. In her longing to know the unknowable source, she gives birth to the demiurge, a being blind to the greater reality, who mistakes himself for God and creates a flawed world in his ignorance. Humanity, infused with fragments of Sophia's own light, becomes the key to her redemption. Through awakening, we not only free ourselves, but restore balance to creation itself. This narrative turns traditional theology inside out. Humanity is not fallen. It is the rescuer of the divine. To the modern mind, the Nag Hammadi texts resonate because they speak directly to the experience of inner transformation. They challenge the notion of external salvation and instead offer a path of personal discovery. They remind us that sacred truth cannot be monopolized, that the divine is not confined to any one book or institution. Their rediscovery also forces us to confront a sobering question: how much of what we call history is simply what survived the fires of suppression? How many revelations have been buried because they threatened those in power? The story of the Nag Hammadi Codices is not just about lost scripture. It is about the reclamation of voice. It reveals that the early centuries of human spirituality were not defined by one path, but by many. That beneath the layers of dogma lies a universal message repeated through every forbidden text we have encountered so far. The divine is not out there. It is within. But the sands of Egypt have not been the only keepers of hidden knowledge. Across the world, in the green valleys of Britain, another collection of secret writings has emerged. A text that speaks not of the soul's imprisonment, but of the earth's cycles, of fire and destruction, of civilizations that rose and fell long before recorded time. It is called the Kolbrin Bible, and within its verses lies the shadow of a cataclysm humanity may have lived through and may yet face again. Hidden within the vaults of obscure British monasteries and secret societies, whispered about in the circles of alternative historians, lies a text said to preserve the memory of worlds that perished long before ours began. It is known as the Kolbrin Bible, a collection of ancient writings that reads like a bridge between myth and history, between scripture and science. Though few have ever seen an original copy, its words, translated and circulated in fragments, speak of a cataclysmic past and a humanity far older than modern civilization dares to admit. The Kolbrin is divided into two main sections. The first, called the Bronze Book, is said to originate from Egyptian priests who survived the destruction that ended their great empire, an event described not as a single flood, but as a series of cosmic upheavals that reshaped the earth. The second, the Kol Book, was written by early Celtic mystics who preserved these Egyptian teachings and wove them into their own oral traditions. Together, they form a sweeping narrative of creation, catastrophe, and rebirth, a chronicle of humanity's forgotten epochs. One of the most striking elements of the Kolbrin is its description of a celestial force known only as the Destroyer. It is depicted as a fiery star or a wandering planet that periodically returns to the inner solar system, bringing devastation in its wake. When it passes, the skies burn, the seas rise, and civilizations vanish beneath fire and water. When blood drops upon the earth, the text warns, the Destroyer will appear, and mountains will open up and belch forth fire and ashes. This recurring cataclysm, the Kolbrin claims, has struck humanity more than once. The flood of Noah, the fall of Atlantis, the end of ancient Egypt, all were echoes of this celestial return. To the modern reader, such passages may sound apocalyptic or symbolic, yet they carry eerie parallels to geological and astronomical evidence of cyclical disasters. The Kolbrin's accounts of pole shifts, cometary impacts, and global floods mirror patterns now recognized by scientists studying ancient climate events. But beyond the physical destruction, the text describes something deeper, a spiritual reset. Each time humanity rises to greatness, it grows arrogant, forgetful of the divine laws, and is brought low so that it might remember again. The Destroyer, then, is not merely a planet or a comet. It is the instrument of cosmic balance, the force that restores equilibrium when humanity loses its way. What makes the Kolbrin so provocative is its suggestion that history is not linear, but cyclical. Civilizations do not evolve in a straight line from primitive to advanced. They rise, fall, and rise again, carrying fragments of memory from one age to the next. The text speaks of men of old, who knew the secrets of the stars, who built great machines and traveled upon the face of the waters, whose knowledge was wiped away in fire and flood. It describes a time when the face of the sky was changed, and the seasons became confused, as if the earth itself had been torn from its course. Whether these are poetic metaphors or the fading recollections of prehistoric cataclysms, they carry a resonance that feels disturbingly familiar in our own age of upheaval. Some who have studied the Kolbrin believe it to be a remnant of a single global tradition, a record passed down through surviving priesthoods after each world-ending event. They note its thematic kinship with the Sumerian Tablets, the Popol Vuh of the Maya, and the flood stories of nearly every culture on Earth. Each speaks of advanced knowledge lost in a great cleansing, of gods or beings who warned a chosen few to preserve the wisdom of the old world. In this light, the Kolbrin can be read as both scripture and survival manual, a guide for future generations to remember the mistakes of the past and prepare for the inevitable cycle to return. The origins of the text remain shrouded in mystery. Some say it was kept by secret orders in Glastonbury Abbey, rescued from the fires that consumed its libraries in the 12th century. Others claim it was preserved by the Druids, who recognized in it the echo of their own myths of world renewal. The few copies that surfaced in the modern era appeared in private collections, their authenticity difficult to prove. Yet, regardless of provenance, the Kolbrin speaks with a voice too ancient, too consistent, to be easily dismissed as fabrication. Its language carries the tone of witness, of those who lived through events so vast they could only be described in mythic terms. Perhaps the most haunting passages of the Kolbrin are not the descriptions of destruction, but those of renewal. After the fires fade and the waters recede, survivors emerge to rebuild, guided by memory and by the fragments of the old world's wisdom. The earth was reborn, it says, and men walked upright in the light once more. There is an undercurrent of hope in its pages, a conviction that even after the darkest age, knowledge will find its way back to those who seek it. This theme, the preservation of truth through cataclysm, echoes through every forbidden text we have encountered. It is the whisper of continuity that refuses to die. For all its warnings and prophecies, the Kolbrin ultimately offers a reflection of humanity itself, fragile yet enduring, forgetful yet yearning to remember. Whether it is a relic of lost civilizations or an allegory for the cycles of spirit, it reminds us that destruction and rebirth are inseparable forces woven into the rhythm of existence. As we turn the page from the windswept Isles of Britain to the jungles of Central America, we encounter another ancient record, one that speaks not only of destruction and renewal, but of cosmic architecture itself. Written in the sacred language of the Maya, it tells of gods who crafted not one, but many human races, each shaped and tested through the great cycles of time. This is the Popol Vuh, the book of the dawn of life, and it reveals a vision of creation as vast and intricate as the stars above. Deep in the highlands of Guatemala, long before the Spanish conquest, the Quiche Maya preserved their sacred history through oral tradition, a story of creation, destruction, and divine experimentation that would one day be written down as the Popol Vuh, the Book of the People. Like the Sumerian Tablets and the Kolbrin Bible, it speaks of cycles, of gods who build and unbuild the world in a series of cosmic attempts to perfect humankind. But what makes the Popol Vuh extraordinary is its scope. It is not simply a creation myth, it is a chronicle of consciousness itself, describing the shaping of beings capable of memory, imagination, and awe. The story begins before the earth was formed, in the stillness of a vast primordial sea. There is no sun, no moon, no living thing, only the divine makers and modelers, beings of light and thought, who dwell in the waters of potential. These creators, named Heart of Sky and Heart of Earth, speak the world into being. Mountains rise from the void, trees and animals appear, and the rhythm of life begins. Yet the gods are not satisfied, for creation lacks an essential component. Beings who can speak their names, who can remember and honor the divine intelligence that set all things in motion. Their first attempt at creating humanity is a failure. They shape men from mud, but the figures crumble, dissolving in the rain. The second attempt fares no better. Beings made of wood, hollow and soulless, who walk and talk but lack compassion, memory, or spirit. These wooden people fill the world but do not revere their makers. They are clever, yet empty, violent and forgetful. And so the gods unleash destruction, fire, flood, and beasts that devour their creators. The sky itself falls upon them, and their voices are lost. Only after this cleansing do the gods succeed, fashioning the final version of humanity from maize, the sacred corn that sustains all life in Mesoamerican tradition. From this union of earth and divine intention, the true humans are born, beings of spirit and substance, capable of gratitude, consciousness, and the remembrance of their cosmic origins. The parallels between the Popol Vuh and other ancient texts are striking. Like the Sumerian accounts, it describes divine beings shaping humanity through multiple experiments. Like the Kolbrin and Enochian narratives, it speaks of catastrophic resets, of creation and destruction as recurring phases in an eternal cycle. And, like the Gnostic teachings found in Nag Hammadi, it insists that enlightenment comes through awareness, the recognition of one's connection to the divine source. The Popol Vuh presents existence not as a single act of creation, but as a process, a refinement of consciousness through trial and rebirth. Within its pages also lies an intricate cosmology, one that aligns the human story with the motion of the heavens. The gods are architects of both time and space, their actions mirrored in the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the stars. The Maya, guided by this sacred text, became master astronomers, constructing calendars so precise they rival modern instruments. For them, time was not linear, but a great wheel, turning through ages known as suns or worlds. Each cycle ends in cataclysm and begins anew, echoing the same cosmic rhythm found in the Kolbrin's destruction and renewal, or the Hermetic principle of eternal return. But beyond its mythic grandeur, the Popol Vuh carries a profound philosophical message: that the purpose of humanity is not dominion, but remembrance. The gods did not create man to rule the earth, but to remember the divine. The act of prayer, ritual, and storytelling becomes a sacred responsibility, the maintenance of balance between the seen and the unseen. Forgetfulness, in this worldview, is the root of all destruction. When human beings lose their connection to the cosmic order, when they forget their role as keepers of the sacred memory, the cycle of chaos begins anew. There is also an undertone of cosmic sorrow running through the text, a recognition that perfection is elusive even for the gods. The creators lament their failed experiments, grieve their rebellious children, and yet continue their work. They are not distant, omnipotent rulers, but beings engaged in an ongoing process of learning and creation. This portrayal of divinity as fallible, as evolving alongside its creation, is a theme that recurs across many forbidden texts. It suggests that the universe itself is alive and self-reflective, seeking to know itself through the consciousness of its inhabitants. For the Maya, this knowledge was encoded not only in words, but in architecture, mathematics, and celestial observation. Their pyramids, aligned with solstices and equinoxes, were instruments of timekeeping and gateways to the heavens. The Popol Vuh provided the metaphysical foundation for these achievements. It was both scripture and science, describing the unity of heaven and earth in symbolic form. To read it today is to glimpse a worldview in which spirituality and astronomy, myth and mathematics are one and the same. When the Spanish missionaries arrived in the 16th century, they recognized the danger of this knowledge. The Popol Vuh, like the Gnostic Gospels, presented a vision of divinity that bypassed the authority of priests and kings. Its message of direct connection to the divine contradicted the colonial doctrine of control. The text was declared heretical, its keepers persecuted, its original copies burned. Only a few fragments survived, hidden by Quiche elders who understood that some truths cannot be destroyed. They can only sleep until the time is right to awaken again. The Popol Vuh is not simply the story of a people. It is a mirror of the human journey itself. It tells us that we are beings of both clay and light, forever striving to remember where we came from. It warns that each age of forgetting leads to collapse, yet also promises that after each fall comes renewal. In this way, it stands alongside every other forbidden text we have encountered, whispering the same message through different tongues, that humanity's true past is not lost. It is encoded within us, waiting to be remembered. And now, as we draw the threads together, from Sumerian skies to Egyptian temples, from Gnostic revelations to Mayan cosmology, we begin to see a single pattern emerging. These scattered writings, separated by oceans and millennia, speak of the same truths, of divine intervention, of cycles of destruction and rebirth, and of knowledge deliberately hidden from the masses. Together, they form a tapestry of forgotten wisdom, a map of humanity's secret inheritance. In the next section, we follow these converging currents to uncover the unifying themes that bind all forbidden texts, the clues that may reveal our true place in the story of creation itself. When one steps back from the fragments, the scrolls, and the half-buried myths scattered across continents and millennia, a strange coherence begins to emerge. The Sumerian clay tablets, the emerald inscriptions of Thoth, the secret visions of Enoch, the cryptic Voynich codex, the buried Gnostic Gospels, the Kolbrin's prophecy of destruction, and the Mayan Popol Vuh, all seem to echo one another, like broken pieces of a single mirror reflecting humanity's forgotten origin. Each text, taken alone, may appear as myth or metaphor, yet together they form a pattern too deliberate to ignore. Beneath their surface, differences lies a shared memory of something immense, a prelude to human history that has been deliberately veiled, rewritten, or silenced. Across all these writings runs the motif of divine intervention, beings from beyond the visible world descending to guide, alter, or awaken mankind. In Sumer, they were the Anunnaki, sky gods who molded humanity from clay. In Egypt, they appeared as Thoth and the gods of light, bestowing wisdom and the science of the stars. In the Book of Enoch, they were the Watchers, angels who crossed the boundary between heaven and earth, mingling their essence with mortals. In the Popol Vuh, they were the heart of sky and earth, architects of successive human creations. Even the Gnostic texts speak of beings of light and shadow, the archons, the hidden powers that shape the material world. Though the names change, the story remains the same. Humanity is not a random accident, but a deliberate design, one that may have been altered, contested, and concealed. The forbidden texts also share an obsession with lost wisdom, the idea that knowledge once freely given was later hidden or forbidden. The emerald tablets speak of secret chambers beneath the earth, where masters of light sleep until the world is ready to receive them again. The Nag Hammadi Codices reveal that the divine spark resides within every human being. Yet institutions of power suppress this truth to preserve their dominance. The Kolbrin warns that each age of arrogance ends in catastrophe, so that wisdom might be reborn in purified form. The pattern is unmistakable: enlightenment, corruption, destruction, renewal. It is a rhythm as old as civilization itself. If one looks closely, another current flows beneath them all: the principle of cyclical time. The Sumerians wrote of kings who ruled before the flood, of a deluge that reset the world. The Egyptians believed history moved in great ages, each ruled by divine dynasties before the fall into human hands. The Mayans charted cosmic ages known as suns, each destroyed by fire, water, or wind before a new creation dawned. Even the Gnostics saw the material world as a prison to be transcended through gnosis, implying that every fall from light is followed by the possibility of return. Time, in this forbidden cosmology, is not a line. It is a circle, and humanity is caught in its endless turning. What unites these stories is their insistence that humanity once knew more than it remembers now. The builders of the pyramids, the scribes of the tablets, the astronomers who aligned temples with the heavens, all seem to have inherited knowledge too advanced to have sprung from primitive beginnings. The texts hint at civilizations before history, perhaps even before recorded time itself, wiped away by cataclysm or buried beneath the sands. The Kolbrin speaks of survivors of the Destroyer, the Popol Vuh of wooden people erased by fire, and Enoch of angels punished for revealing divine secrets. In each, knowledge is both gift and curse, the flame that enlightens and consumes, Yet perhaps the most haunting common thread is the act of suppression. These texts were hidden, banned, or destroyed not because they were trivial, but because they threatened the foundations of established power. The priests of later ages, the empires that rose upon the ruins of older worlds, could not allow such memories to persist. The Nag Hammadi Gospels were buried to protect them from destruction by the early church. The Book of Enoch was removed from the biblical canon. The Popol Vuh was condemned as heresy. The Emerald Tablets vanished into secrecy. It is as if history itself has been curated, selected and sanitized to ensure humanity remembers only what serves the present order. When seen together, the forbidden texts tell a story of rebellion and remembrance. They suggest that our species has been guided, perhaps even engineered, by higher intelligences, only to be periodically cut off from its own potential. Whether these beings were gods, interdimensional entities, or advanced remnants of lost civilizations, the effect is the same. Humanity was given the gift of knowledge, then left to forget. The echoes of that forgetting reverberate through every age, through myths of fallen angels, lost Edens, and drowned continents. And yet, the message carried forward by each text is not despair, but awakening. The Emerald Tablets urge seekers to rise from the darkness into the light. The Gnostics call upon the divine spark within to remember its source. The Popol Vuh reminds us that we are made of both earth and divinity. Even the apocalyptic Kolbrin promises renewal after every destruction. The hidden wisdom of the past, when pieced together, tells not of a final ending, but of a beginning waiting to be rediscovered. Humanity, it seems, has been here before, and perhaps, in the cycles of time, we are destined to remember again. In these threads, divine intervention, lost knowledge, cyclical time, and the suppression of truth, we find not separate myths, but fragments of a single story, the unwritten history of humankind. Each forbidden text is a page torn from that lost chronicle. Together, they whisper of an epoch when gods and men walked side by side, when science and spirit were one, and when the veil between worlds was thinner than it is today. The question that remains is why? Why were these truths hidden, these texts buried or destroyed? Who benefits from keeping humanity ignorant of its true origins? The answer may lie not in the heavens, but in the corridors of power, both earthly and unseen. For as long as man forgets that he carries the divine within, he remains controllable. And that, perhaps, is the greatest secret of all. As we reach the conclusion of this journey through the hidden and forbidden texts of humanity, one truth becomes unavoidable. Our history, as commonly told, is incomplete. The fragments we have examined, the Sumerian Tablets, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Book of Enoch, the Voynich Manuscript, the Nag Hammadi Codices, the Kolbrin Bible, and the Popol Vuh, each offer a window into a reality deliberately obscured. They reveal that the story of humanity is far older, far stranger, and far more profound than the sanitized versions preserved in textbooks and temples. These texts suggest that we were not born in ignorance, but were once recipients of knowledge so vast that it threatened the very institutions that now claim to define history. The act of hiding these texts was not simply about controlling information. It was about shaping belief, about creating a narrative that confines human perception. From the destruction of Gnostic Gospels to the silencing of Enoch's visions, from the disappearance of Atlantean wisdom encoded in the Emerald Tablets to the centuries-long secrecy surrounding the Voynich Manuscript, there has been a persistent effort to dictate what humanity may know about itself. And yet, the texts persist, scattered, coded, fragmented, waiting for those who are ready to read between the lines. Their survival is a testament to the resilience of truth itself. What unites these forbidden works is not their origin, their form, or even the names of the beings they describe, but the central idea that knowledge is a sacred responsibility. In each case, the wisdom imparted, whether from gods, angels, mystics, or cosmic architects, carries a warning. The power of knowledge is transformative, but only when tempered with consciousness, morality, and awareness. Misuse or neglect of this wisdom leads to calamity, yet its careful application offers the possibility of ascension, of alignment with the underlying order of the cosmos. It is a pattern repeated across millennia: creation, guidance, failure, destruction, and the promise of renewal. To remember the unwritten past is to confront not just history, but our own potential. These texts suggest that humanity is not merely a passive observer of time, but a participant in a larger drama, one that spans worlds and epochs. They invite us to see ourselves as inheritors of ancient wisdom, as beings whose consciousness is intertwined with cycles of cosmic significance. They remind us that the divine is not external, hidden in far-off realms or inaccessible heavens, but within us, in the spark that has survived cataclysms, suppressions, and the erasure of memory. To awaken to that reality is to step beyond the boundaries imposed by authority, tradition, and forgetfulness, and to reclaim the mantle of understanding that our ancestors once held. The act of rediscovery is not simple. It is not a matter of reading texts and absorbing facts. It is an inner journey, a process of recognition and integration. The Sumerian gods, the Atlantean Thoth, the fallen Watchers, the cryptic Voynich script, the Gnostic revelations, the cataclysmic Kolbrin, and the cosmic architects of the Popol view. All these voices converge to say the same thing. We are capable of remembering our origins, of restoring what was lost, of understanding our place in the grand design. Each text, in its own way, is a call to awaken, a map for the seeker willing to confront the truth that has been concealed. And so, as we close this exploration, the question is not simply what these forbidden texts tell us about the past, but what they demand of the present. Humanity stands at a threshold, capable of understanding more than ever before, yet often blinded by distraction, dogma, and forgetfulness. To read these works with clarity and intention is to participate in a process that has been ongoing for millennia. The remembrance of our true origin, the acknowledgement of knowledge deliberately hidden, and the reclaiming of our own power as conscious, aware beings. The forbidden texts do not offer easy answers or tidy conclusions. They are riddles, mirrors, warnings, and guides. They tell of civilizations that rose and fell, of beings who taught and betrayed, of truths so potent they were buried for centuries. Yet they also insist on hope, on the persistence of memory, on the inevitability of rediscovery. To remember the unwritten past is to recognize that humanity has walked these cycles before and will walk them again. It is to awaken to the realization that within each of us lies the capacity to bridge what has been forgotten with what must yet be known. The story of humanity is not finished. It has been fragmented, hidden, and distorted, but it is alive. The forbidden texts are proof that memory survives, that knowledge endures, and that the truth, however deeply concealed, awaits those bold enough to seek it, patient enough to listen, and wise enough to integrate it. In the echoes of these lost voices lies an invitation to reclaim our heritage, to honor the wisdom of those who came before, and to awaken to the true, boundless scope of what it means to be human.